On your screen, the consequences of an irreversible disaster. It's quite hard to believe. It's more like someone rushed out of the house in a hurry and forgot to turn off the water in the kitchen. It happens to everyone. We see neither the raging flames on the scorched streets as after a nuclear disaster, nor the wreckage of buildings and broken glass which a devastating tsunami leaves behind. Not a single person who survived the epidemic of the virus. As a rule, average people have a very superficial idea of what is happening to the body, and they start worrying when the symptoms can no longer be ignored. These are very favorable conditions for those who, invisibly embedded in the cells, introduce the genetic material and turn them into a factory to produce their own kind, namely viruses. It is difficult to imagine, but viruses come in more types than animals and plants. We have studied about 0.5% of this number, while around 800,000 different viruses are potentially dangerous to humans. Viruses, like every living creature on our planet, are encoded by genes. In fact, a virus is a genetic code in a protein coat that has evolved over billions of years to learn how to subjugate cells, that is, interact with the ribosome and nucleic acids. The virus itself is not viable. Nevertheless, the cell does not voluntarily give in. It is constantly fighting the virus and is even ready to kill itself just to prevent its raider capture. If the cell fails, then inside the cell is an occupied factory. Viral particles begin to self-assemble from synthesized nucleic acid molecules and proteins. One cell is insignificant within the individual organism, but this is a real chance for a virus to start its life because it can make about 1,000 viral units, each of which in the future will reproduce a new 1,000. Most viral genomes are based on DNA, and some are based on RNA. This distinguishes viruses from other living organisms and gives scientists food for discussion about their origin. There is still no consensus on whether to attribute the virus to the living world or not. However, there is something that experts do not argue about. Virus genomes mutate faster than the genomes of any known organism. With this knowledge, you should stop wondering why humanity regularly encounters a new type of flu and suffers from an unexplored disease that no one can cure with any of the existing medications. We simply can't keep up with them. Besides, if the virus penetrates the body, it does not shout that it is there from the rooftops. At the utmost, it subtly hints that it found a loophole and the immune system did not figure it out. On average, the incubation period takes from 2 to 21 days. On rare occasions, it takes a little longer. Symptoms can range from fatigue, fever, chills, and muscular aches to sore throats, joint pain, bleeding, vomiting, diarrhea, and others. It can produce a wide variety of symptoms and different consequences, one of which is death.
Some cases have been actually diagnosed that way in the United States today.
In total, viral diseases have caused countless deaths. The exact number of epidemics remains a mystery. Nevertheless, a real story can beat apocalyptic films owing to a plot about a deadly disease and prove there is no greater horror story than real life. Smallpox virus is found even in samples of Egyptian mummies. The number of smallpox victims had reached 300 million people until humanity eradicated the disease. The last case of the disease was registered not so long ago, in 1977 in Somalia. A little over 100 years ago, the world faced the Spanish flu. It spread across the globe in just 4 months. The virus, which did not seem to differ from the previous ones, suddenly mutated and took, according to various estimates, from 50 to 100 million lives. The virus has spread at lightning speed due to its technological progress and globalization. The virus traveled with the soldiers and attacked everyone, both allies and enemies. 21st century. Swine flu spread first to Mexico, the United States, and then around the globe. Over the past 50 years, it has become the deadliest for humanity. During the first year of its development, between 151,700 and 500,000 people died worldwide. And we are lucky. After all, the virus neither mutated during the pandemic to a more lethal form, nor developed resistance to an antiviral substance. Quite often, viruses are spreading faster and further. The virus copies itself, finding a loophole in the cellular defense. RNA-containing viruses mutate with each new gene. There are no two identical viruses, even inside a single cell. A virus constantly mutates. This is how new strains emerge in nature, the most viable and dangerous of which become the instigators of pandemics. The flu shots you get this year are based on the assessment of the world's epidemiological data for the previous year. It predicts which strain will prevail. However, these assessments do not always hit the target, and sometimes they do not hit at all. Some pandemics come back despite everything and remind us of the horrors of the past. Coronaviruses are our old friends. In some cases, extremely dangerous strains appear due to mutations. 2019 nCoV is one of them. The streets of cities in China's Hubei province are now sparsely populated. Cinemas do not wait for spectators. Picturesque parks are empty. No traffic jams, no queues. And from speakers on every corner come safety rules for citizens who cannot leave their homes more than a couple of times a week. Pharmacies display sold-out signs. There is a quarantine here because of the so-called SARS, which today is widely known among the public as a coronavirus. In any case, the first recorded case of infection 2019 nCoV occurred in the Chinese Wuhan market in Huanan, where different animals are sold as exotic food. Human infection was transmitted from an animal, but now the main way to spread the coronavirus is from human to human. WHO recognized the pandemic as an emergency of international concern. The virus is gradually spreading beyond China to South Korea and especially Europe. Italy, Germany, Spain, France, and other countries. Even for the United States, the coronavirus pandemic means a normal life is on hold. As of March 14th, more than 5,000 people died. The total number of infected people is 136,000 worldwide. In the first few days after the critical situation was announced, many videos of people falling unconscious walking down an alley were posted on the internet. Patients are shivering in a hospital bed in convulsions. There are numerous bodies of the deceased wrapped in bags. After these pictures, everyone who finds even the slightest sign similar to the symptoms of the coronavirus, not without reason, start panicking. It is often in vain because manipulating fear is one of the most frequently used tricks. But we will talk about that some other time. At the moment, the main way to deal with 2019 nCoV is not in fact vaccination. Developing a vaccine against a specific strain takes time. And now scientists from all over the world, and especially virologists from China, Thailand, and the United States, are looking for that vaccine formula. In the meantime, the best idea is quarantine and suspending all major sports like NBA, NHL, UEFA Euro, festivals like Coachella, and huge events such as E3. Flights are canceled daily. Countries' borders are closing. People who have returned from China or Italy to their home countries go directly to hospitals. The luxury Diamond Princess cruise ship with passengers from different countries has been berthed nearby the Japanese port of Yokohama and quarantined since the beginning of February. That's because they found carriers of the coronavirus there. And none of the cities dared to accept the ship with its passengers. People were trapped in their cabins. For 2 weeks, passengers could not leave their cabins or even communicate with their fellow passengers. If there was no window in the cabin, they were allowed to walk on deck for an hour a day, use masks, and keep the distance. After 2 weeks, 542 of the 3,711 people on board were infected. Even quarantine was not an effective counteraction. For some reason, the cruise ship turned into an incubator. Even though quarantine was not approved by everyone, it is a fairly humane solution compared to what the producers of popular culture goods offer. So in the film The Cassandra Crossing, a person infected with a deadly virus ended up on a train that has relatively closed space. In the film, the train with infected people was welded and intended to be pushed off the cliff to prevent further spread. The fiction and the absurdity of the situation only confirm that people are willing to go to extreme measures in an attempt to protect themselves from the unknown and unfavorable. In films and books, deadly viruses are often the antagonist's creation. Someone creates artificial samples either based on data of the studied pandemics or simply because of their exceptional genius. Then there are two main scenarios. First, the infection is deliberate. Second, the virus escapes from the lab because of someone's mistake. Such a plot would not be so exciting if these scenarios were impossible to implement in real life. Along with artificially synthesized viruses stored in a hiding place, we should take natural viruses into account. People daily fight or fought natural viruses in the past. For example, after smallpox was eradicated, the virus samples were left in several laboratories around the world. They are officially known to be in governmental departments of the United States and the former Soviet Union. Humanity already knows how to overcome this virus. But what if a similar one, which resembles smallpox but quite different in its power, spreads across the planet? If everyone is aware that the virus is not a pet that can be trained, but an uncontrollable destructive force that becomes more and more complicated, why not just stop the research and reduce the risks or at least the pace? Don't we have enough viruses that start wars every day without the scientists' help? Even though the strains of already defeated viruses are necessary for the study of their genomes to create vaccines, in the case of new manifestations and mutations, as well as the development of drugs against other viral diseases. The key metaphor is parallel to a weapon. It is very tempting to seize something that your adversary won't even notice. The coronavirus has a large genome and a long incubation period. That is, by the time symptoms appear, it is spread throughout the body. It is respiratory and causes severe pulmonary edema. All four factors can be used effectively in the creation of biological weapons. It is not surprising that rumors about the leak of this sample from the laboratory have gained popularity. They were also supported by an article in the journal Nature dated 2015. Co-authored by scientists from Wuhan. It is dedicated to a chimeric virus that can infect people and affect the cells of the respiratory tract. Experts admit that the coronavirus could be a good prototype for a human-caused virus, but its detailed study has shown the probability of this close to zero because there are a lot of natural pathogens. There is also an opinion that the people of the Mongoloid race are more susceptible to infection from a coronavirus. However, prominent virologists dismiss the possibility of viruses having a racial preference. First of all, because the difference between races does not lie in one or two genes, and it is not so obvious that the viruses or other microbes can clearly distinguish them. But will it always be like that? After all, there are a lot of biological features, from gender to the presence of chronic diseases. All of this can be used as part of a special filter, as we see in online shopping. The selection will not affect the basket, but the number of peculiarities of survivors and victims. The attempts to turn the result of scientific research into evil have been going on for decades. Since 1932, the so-called Detachment 731 has been operating in Japan. They did research in the field of biological weapons, and experiments were carried out on living human beings, prisoners of war, kidnapped, and often on members of their families. A special unit deliberately infected the subjects with various viruses, poisoned them with gases, and studied human endurance, changing the conditions of the external environment. According to the testimony of General Otozo Yamada, this is how they prepared for a bacteriological war. Unlike the war in its traditional sense, this can be lost having no clue that you are participating in it. The situation today is dark times in our history, and I want to believe that humanity has moved beyond. However, one clandestine activity has been replaced by another, and it is not so obvious. You've probably heard of the pharmaceutical mafia, the one that is being sued and publicly accused of inflating the cost of medicines vital for people. One of the last cases occurred in the United States in December 2019. Authorities in 40 states have accused pharmaceutical firms of conspiring to inflate drug prices, including those against diabetes and cancer. The lawsuit says that for some items, the cost is 1,000% higher than allowed. This is not the only way to manipulate. Those who fill the market with medicines have a huge, if not unlimited, power. Imagine a situation that a new product X is released. It cannot treat a disease Y, but can reduce its negative impact on the human body. People start massively buying X because the last thing a person will save on is their health. After some time, X turns into X1, then into X2, X3, and X4. Each version is more attractive and effective than the previous one. Well, what is my point? A person will stand in a queue for health, not an additional portrait camera. The effectiveness of each new drug can also be debatable. We do not live in a time when you can put blind trust in commercials and contextual advertising. After all, there may come a day when someone will cross the internal boundaries of morality and begin to treat people from the virus they created. In the future, viruses can become so dangerous that they will act on people with a certain set of genes, or even worse, act on everyone who does not take an expensive anti-drug. What will happen to most people if the magic vaccine ends up in the hands of a few people? If the leak happens accidentally, and even the authors of the unnatural selection will not have time to take a life-saving pill? The truth is that there may not be a life-saving pill at all. Every day it is becoming more difficult to fight viruses. While we are looking for weapons against one, hundreds of thousands are looking for weapons against us. It is only a matter of time before a new pandemic appears or this one becomes more deadly. When? In a year? A month? Tomorrow? Or was it created yesterday and we can only watch this POV frightening action? You just don't know about it. Open your door.